Cool.
Thank you for getting off, Penny. This is Penny. This is Copper. And these are tips and tricks you can use if you have a dog that does what Copper does. He's an excited and a submissive urinator. Now, before I came over here, I asked the guardian on the phone. I was running actually a couple minutes late, and I wanted to get a lay of the land. So I asked her, does he excitedly urinate? Sorry, that's a cat. It's always a cat that causes the problems here at Doggone Problems. Does he excitedly urinate at the door? My parents have a dog named Charlie that also has an excited bladder, or he urinates when he's overexcited. Now, it's important to understand that when your dogs do these things, they're not doing them intentionally. I've talked to hundreds of people that think, every time somebody comes over, my dog pees on the floor, and they're mad at them. If you have a friend who is so afraid of a spider, she peed her pants, you would not make fun of her for doing that. If she's a good friend, you probably would. But most people, you would just say, I'm so sorry, sweetie. No, it's okay. I would have peed my pants too. You commiserate with them. So if you punish or you get mad at a dog for submissively urinating or excitedly urinating, you will make it more inclined to happen. Now, I'm definitely not going to give her the treats that I have in my hand, which is why she's doing this, as Copper demonstrates, because she's on top of me. That's not disrespectful, but it is a lack of respect for me as an authority figure, because I did not invite her up. And so I'm practicing a little bit of what we call operant conditioning, sit. That's a wonderful example of operant conditioning right there. And example of Copper being smart, because he just saw she was on him, she got down, he started petting him. I've been sitting here the whole time. Maybe I'll jump up and get down and I'll get that attention. So it tells me he's a smarty pants. But operant conditioning is one of the two ways that dogs learn: operant conditioning and classical conditioning, which is Pavlov's dog. Operant conditioning is based on what the dog does. So when the dog, if I'm petting Copper, everything's fine. I stop petting him if he jumps up on me, or if I'm petting him and he puts his paw on me, or he jumps up on me while I'm petting him, and I stop petting him with precision of when I stop. I'm telling him, because you jump up on me, that caused me to stop petting you. And then as soon as the dog gets down, then I reach down and start petting him, and I say the word off to quantify that getting off of me is something that's rewardable. So basically, in his case, he's got both ends of the spectrum. Usually dogs are excited urinator or a submissive urinator. When you're petting him, does he ever flip over on his back right away as soon as you're petting him? Okay. Some dogs will do that. If that is the case for you watching at home and your dog does that, stop petting your dog when he does it, because that's too submissive. Some dogs submissively urinate to show I'm not worthy, I'm going to pee on myself, or pee to show you how just subjugated I feel about myself. So we don't want to reward that with any attention. Anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're going to enhance and enlarge, including unbalanced states of mind. That's all right, there's nothing she can get in there. So a lot of people, if your dog is fearful, they're like, it's okay, buddy, hang in there. You're going to make your dog more fearful. Excited is not is an unbalanced state of mind. Excited is not necessarily happy. Most of us, when it comes to dogs, confuse excited for happy. But a dog can be excited and not happy, or it can be happy and not excited. They frequently are happy and excited, usually because when we come home and they're all excited, we reach over and pet them. Well, we're making them more excited the next time that happens. And let's say each time we do it, make them a 1/5 of a percentage point more excited. There's 2 guardians in the house. They probably come and go twice a day. So that means every day probably they raise it by 1% for each dog. How long? They're 3-year-old? 3. So they could be like 900% more excited than they were when they were a puppy. Probably an exaggeration, but they probably are quite a bit more excited now than they were before. She developed good bladder control. He didn't. There's a lot of variety for it. But really what we want to do is, hello kitty, is to not allow them to get overexcited or to reward them or motivate them when they're too submissive. So a couple things. So basically, I talked off camera about petting with a purpose and passive training, which are 2 ways that sorry, it's not a cat thing. But I've talked about 2 different ways of rewarding desired behaviors. Sit. One of them is passive training, which is what he did there. He was on me. I didn't tell him to, but as soon as he got off, then I suddenly started petting him. So passive training is waiting for the dog to do it and then rewarding him. Off. That's a perfect example of it right there. She wants attention from me, so I might go like this. Sit. Sit. So petting with purpose, I'm telling her to do something, and I'm petting her to reward her for doing it. So for him, I want to make sure that we are not petting him when he is in excited states of mind. Frequently, it's when we first come home, but there probably are other times that he also gets excited. Now, I'm guessing for feeding is probably one of those times. Does he get excited when you're pulling out food and preparing the food?
Yes.
So, and I did this at the door when I first come in. I do this with a lot of dogs that are excited. When I come to the door, people just want to come on in. Well, the dogs are all excited and jumping and barking. Now, it kind of ended up backfiring a little bit in their case, but if you guys eventually enforce more control, you could probably get there. What I did was I reached for the handle, the dog started barking. I pulled my arm back. And I kept on going back and forth like this until eventually I could touch it, and they didn't bark. But I waited for them to stop barking before I reached. So I was just standing there waiting. Now, most of your guests, you're probably not going to feel comfortable doing this for, but if you do have neighbors or friends that could come over and help you with this, just let them know ahead of time. And when you come to the door, if they're barking, pull your hand back. And as soon as they stop barking, reach for it. Now, the problem is we have two, and they will exasperate each other. So what I would do when you're doing this, whenever you're doing dog, that was very crafty by the cat, but whenever you're doing dog training, it's always easier to work with one dog at a time because they will influence things. And at that point, they're overexcited because somebody's at the door. And if he barks, she's going to bark. Every time she barks, she's going to make him bark, and now you have a cascading effect. So what you want to do, there's a couple things we can do. First of all, before we have guests come over, take him out and walk him, or take him outside to do a little bit of business. The less volume that he has in his bladder, the easier it's going to be for him to hold it because it's a smaller amount. Number two, we can exercise them a little bit before people come over, so he's not as full of beans to get overstimulated. The other thing we do is, as I talked about, have people come to the door and wait and just open the inside door and then just back off and just wait. And then as soon as the dogs stop barking for longer than 2 seconds, reach for the handle. As soon as you reach like this, they'll start barking, pull back. And back and forth we'll go. Eventually you get to the point, and that's okay. There's a cat getting in my bag. But eventually you get to the point where the dogs are like, oh, this is boring. Is he ever going to come in or not? Whatever, I got other things to do. And they'll walk away. Ideally, that's when you'd want to walk in. Now, these dogs, he's being very forceful about it. I want the treats in your hand. But these dogs got really upset when I stayed outside the door because that's probably the first time I'd ever do that. Normally, the guardians are chastising them. Well, if you yell at a dog for barking, it's going to think, cool, we're both barking, or you agree, that person agrees with me. And you're not going to stop it. It's actually going to make it worse. So what we would do is help them practice, keep people coming to the door. Now, a couple things that we can do is, like I said, the pausing and waiting is great, but there's a lot of other things we can do. So I'm going to back up a little bit so I can trigger a response. Normally, if they hear do you have a doorbell?
Yes.
Doorbell or this? This is an example of what we call classical conditioning. Something happens, something a dog likes happens immediately after that, and that triggers a response. Pick up the leash, the dog's like, oh, I get excited because I'm about to go for a walk. And I'm not giving treats, but dogs can't sniff and bark at the same time, so I'm letting them sniff it to stop the barking. So what I'd like you to do is when you're watching TV and there's nothing is going on, no, that time we didn't get any barking. So they hear the bark, but nobody got up and go to the door. Nobody came in through the door. So in this sort of situation, the knock anticipates or they precedes something else is going to happen. Well, now we trigger the knock without that thing happening. Another way you can do this is ring the doorbell and then not have anybody come through the door and not have anybody get up. The other thing you do is what we call classical conditioning, where I let the dogs chew on this. That would have pretty much guaranteed been a knock. So what I'm doing is I'm providing a positive reinforcement before this happens. Now this is not to help him with the excited urination specifically, but the excitement level that he gets when people come in the house keeps on getting up higher and higher. And the guardians, when they come home, probably pet him and them and her, and it makes them more excited. Everything in there is sealed, so don't worry about it. So basically, we can help them practice not getting excited for this trigger. That's a good example. No reinforcer being delivered, and immediately reinforcer being delivered, no barking, no matter how hard I knock. So you do this with the doorbell as well. What I usually do is I have somebody else outside, and I do it when we're on the phone. So what I do is I say, okay, ring it now, and I'm delivering this, and then they hear the ding-dong, but they're chewing on the treat. And what you want to do is do it far enough away from your chime box where dog's like, it's far away, or I can't get up the stairs because the gate's down or whatever anyways, so I might as well just sit here and take the treat. Well, after a while, you create an association. The doorbell means I get a treat. Right now, the doorbell means somebody's coming in, I'm going to get excited. Well, now the doorbell means I just get a treat. So I'm not excited about it because the treat's right here. And all the triggers that are normally associated with people coming in, no longer associated with it. So we kind of kill it on both ends. And eventually the doorbell rings or it doesn't ring or there's a knock and they don't bark. Now, for me personally, I have a dog that if I see a cat, or not a cat, sorry. If I see a squirrel, I say alert when my dogs see it and run after it. So now if I say alert, they bark like these guys do, like that. Thank you. So I have a lot of clients in California that I have them do a faux command. So every time that somebody, that they see a squirrel or a rabbit, I tell them to say protect. Because I have a lot of women in California, in Los Angeles, who are single women and get a dog for some part for protection, but they don't want it to be a mean, scary dog. So this is a faux command. So every time they see a squirrel, they say protect. Well, if you're out jogging with your dog and some guy comes up to you and he's like, hey, baby, and you're like, protect, and the dog goes, Rah! Most people are going to try to run away. And so it creates, so if you guys do want to create a command so that you can trigger it, so if somebody does come to the door and you want the barking, you can trigger it on command. Right now, they're doing it. All right, so, but for this video, like I said, really what I want to do is go over all the things that cause excited urination. Most of it is reinforcing when the dog is submissive or excited. Now, when he submissively urinates, what sort of situations happen that cause that? Like when you're chewing him out or correcting him, or?
When we could like pick him up to get in the car.
Okay.
He cowers down and pees.
Okay. So if that's the case, whenever as a dog psychologist, what I do is I really try to break things down in individual steps. So if that gets him too excited, what I might do is like go like this and just get him used to this motion of me reaching my hand underneath. So as soon as the treat went away, you saw he kind of turned and looked. So let's try that again. Sit. So I'm doing the actions for it, but I'm not doing the final act. And I'm holding the treat so he has to chew it in 3 or 4 little bites. Let's do that again. She's trying to take his treat. Let's do it this way. There you go. So I'm able to pick him up without any cowering. This is not the ideal position to hold the dog in, by the way. But I preceded it by giving him that positive reinforcer. So for whatever reason, and this is a lot of people, I teach a puppy class, a lot of people like they want, well, like when he's a puppy, comes over and there's a little girl like, I want to hold him. And they fall and they drop it. And then the kid's like, well, the dog's like, I'm going to be afraid of kids the rest of my life, or kids picking me up. So something like that might have happened to him, and that's why he's doing that. I have a lot of clients that have a dog that was abused. And so you reach over to pet it and it cowers down or pees. Well, because this is what happened. They were getting smacked. So a lot of times for dogs like that, what I'll do is in a counter conditioning exercise, I'll take a treat like this, I'll smash it, and I'll just do this slow, and I'm not actually heading him, and I'm creating a positive association with that. So if there are things like that picking up that he fails and he pees, he's telling you this is scaring the piss out of me, literally. So what we want to do is, but we just do it anyways because we have to go to the store or whatever it is. Well, when we're doing this, when we're not going with the car, there's not all the rest of that energy. We're helping him practice one step along a time. Just a hand approaching you is a pleasant experience. A hand touching your belly is a pleasant experience. A hand picking you up is a pleasant experience. And after a while, you can do it without. And we're not there yet because we've only been doing this. So if you reach for him, he does that, he's telling you, I'm not ready yet. So go back to the treats and keep on picking him up over and over again until he's comfortable with that. Now, the excited urination, like the most common time this happens is when people come into our house. So teaching the dogs to stay calm by desensitizing them to the knocking and the doorbell, like I talked with counter conditioning, really help. Another thing that I like to do is teach the dogs to move away from the door when people come. So the doorbell rings, and if this is the door, they run to the door. Now they're in front of you, you go to open the door, they're in front of you, they think you're assisting them. So if I open the door when they're right there, they're already excited. And then I open the door, that's like rewarding that excited behavior. So what I would do is, let's say that there's a knock on the door or doorbell, and they go to the door. What I would do is I'd have you guys practice this independent of having a real guest there. So one of you or somebody that you know outside on the phone. And kind of, if I remember correctly, you guys have like paper or something on your, so the dogs can't see if people are coming up there. So they shouldn't be able to see the person there. So what I would do is, let's say this is the door, I would have them, have the dogs, they're going to naturally run to the door when they hear the doorbell. So what I would do is this is to indicate the doorbell ding dong. So what I would do is I show the dogs I have a treat, ding dong. So the instant that they lick the treat up, they'll hear the ding dong sound. And you're throwing it about 10 feet away from the door. I had one client that did this. They actually put a dog bed in that position. They threw it onto the dog bed. This is a form of classical conditioning. So now when they ring the doorbell, the dogs run away from the door and go sit down on the dog bed. Well, if somebody's at the door and I'm really excited, I'm right here, I can't be more proximate. It's as intense as it possibly can be. If I'm 10 feet away, it's not as intense. So increasing the distance and helping the dog practice staying away from the door while you go answer it can help lower the intensity of things. Also, by having them sit down and stay there develops a little bit of self-control during the activity. But when you do this, actually, let me back up for this. Before the doorbell thing, what I would do is I would throw the treat on the dog bed or the area that I want, and I would assign a word like station, away, Jamaica, any words you want, fun words preferably, Boston. And so you throw it away, and then the dog goes there and licks it up and says Boston, and I say Boston. And then it comes over, I toss another treat. I do that with about 10 treats, about 3 to 5 times a day with each dog. And for these treats, you can tear them in half. After a while, you say Boston, and the dogs run over there. But we're doing this without the energy, excitement of the door. And we're also deprogramming them by knocking and ringing the doorbell to remove the excitement level for that. Then the last stage is what I was talking about, where you have somebody outside, and we go over here. You could either say Boston, if they don't have it, just throw the treat there. But the doorbell should only ring the instant after the dog licks up in their mouth. They're still going to run over here, but nobody's coming into the door. So you're going to do this, you probably practice 10 or 15 times in a row, and then walk away, and nobody ever comes through the door when you're doing this activity. And after a while, ding dong, the dogs just run over there, and they're staying there, and then you go to answer the door, and it's not so intense, so his excited bladder won't come into play. What other situations do you get excited for?
When family comes to visit and they pet him on the couch.
Okay, so one of the things I talked about is not allowing the dogs in the furniture for a period of time, because the higher a dog sits, the more rank they have. And I think the dogs think that they have the same authority as their humans. So I would have a rule for the family members. So when they come over, you can get a couple of these. This is just a treat pouch, and just give each person a little Ziploc bag, and just say, you know what, you have treats you can give to the dog, but you can only give them to the dog for sitting or laying down. So he's a smarty pants. But everybody, he jumps up on people and they probably pet him. Well, if he jumps up on me and I pet him, then I'm saying I'm petting you for claiming me. That's one of the things dogs do when they jump up on you. Or he's putting his paws on without my permission or invitation. That's also inappropriate. So what I do now, if I have a bunch of treats and everybody who comes over, especially if they're little kids, they love giving dogs treats, but you have to give it, you have to sit or thank. After a while, the other dogs come sit in front of people to get that treat instead of jumping up on them. And instead of people petting them and making them more excited when they're excited, the dogs are sitting down, which is actually going the other direction. Instead of being excited, we're being calmer. And we're rewarding the dogs for being calm. Now, one last thing we'd like to do is assign a command word for being calm. And I have to do this because otherwise my legs would go to sleep. So a lot of us, we do this in our puppy classes. So a lot of us, not this part, this is an example of what not to do, but I go to people's houses and let's say they have I've done Dachshunds that are aggressive as well. And the dog is like, I will kill you if you come inside. They're barking, they're snarling. And the humans feel bad about it and they want to try to console the dog. What do? It's okay, good boy. It's okay, good boy. And they usually say it in that same sort of sing-songy voice. Well, anything our dog is doing when we pet it is what we're reinforcing. And I'm assigning a command word. So although my attempt at it's okay, good boy, or girl in this case, is to relax, what I'm saying is it's okay, good boy means try to kill the guest. So this is the exact opposite of what we're trying to do. So we don't want to do that. What we want to do is we want to assign the command word when they're calm. Right now she's pretty calm. So now this would be a great time to pet her and say, settle. Or chillaxin, or chill, or whatever you want. But it should be about a 2 to 3 second stroke. A lot of people are like, chill. You can make them more excited by petting fast. So like that, that's a submissive. So immediately stop petting. Now if you're petting her and she's like, oh, this feels good. Oh man, why don't you just do the whole, that's different. But if she flips over that quick or he flips over that quick, immediately stop petting. What you're saying is when you get too submissive, that's not an energy that I want to reward or engage with. And as soon as he rolls back over, then you pet him. As soon as he rolls over his side, stop petting. So that's again, that operant conditioning. So, so for the, what was I talking about right before there?
Settling?
The settle exercise, thank you. So when they're nice and relaxed, come up with a word that means chill. And when you're watching TV and they're nice and relaxed like this, and we assign it settle. Well, now when the dog hears settle, this is the energy that they're receiving. And eventually through enough repetition, when the dog's going crazy, you say settle, and they can relax. But be careful how you do it. If your dog doesn't have it quite, you start saying settle, you might make settle to mean get excited. But the key thing really for him, more than anything else, is he can't be petted when he's overexcited or feeling subordinate or submissive, because that's going to amplify it. And so, do you have a lot of guests that do come over and visit? A lot of family members?
Family, yeah.
So when family members come over, tell them to watch this video and just say, under no circumstances can you pet them when they're excited. And if they're kids, sometimes, you can work out some sort of motivation. But the thing about it is, everybody's like, but I'm good with dogs. Let me show you I'm good with dogs. And the dog pees on your carpet and you got to go get a spot bot or whatever it is. So just let people know, look, we hired somebody, we're getting good results. But the whole thing is we want him to form a behavior pattern of not urinating. And the longer that he goes of having activities where he doesn't urinate, the more likely he is to not do that in the future. Now, one last thing, if your dog suddenly starts getting excited or submissive urinations, you want to make sure they don't have a urinary tract infection. I'm assuming this is a chronic behavior that you've already checked that out. I have had probably half the people who have a dog that excitedly or submissively urinates. That's actually the problem. And so all the rest of the stuff is unnecessary. It's just faster to go to your vet because the stuff is not relevant for it. All right, well, this is Penny, and this is Copper, and this is a Copper sit. And these are some tips and tricks you can use if you have a dog that is excited or a submissive urinator.